Thank you, candidates. As a reminder, you'll have 2 minutes each to answer the next set of questions. Our first question tonight is on the topic of education. I've read about this federal program called Race to the Top, which is $4.3 billion worth of federal grants to state education agencies. Many of us libertarians think that sounds like something that should be named Race to the Trough, as opposed to the top. That be that as it may, Governor Perry announced that Texas will not be applying for its share in the neighborhood of $700 million of that funding, which has me wondering, what is the proper role of state government in the education of our youth? Mr. Dale.
The proper role of state government is threefold: to protect our children and our educators from federal interference, to move as rapidly as possible away from state control over education, and to facilitate the move away from local government education bureaucracies to a completely non-governmental educational system, the separation of school and state. Regarding the first role, Texas needs a governor who will refuse federal funding, because those monies mean federal control, and who will work to roll back the federal role in education, which is a role not permitted under the 10th Amendment. Regarding the second and third, I have proposed, and it's on my website, the Texas Affordable School Choice Plan, which will provide a path toward those goals, a path which voters of Texas can support. It allows tax relief, not only for parents who send their own children to non-governmental schools, but also for those who contribute to the education of the children of others. When this proposal has been presented to audiences, including in Texas, school choice has received a high degree of approval. Taking the politics out of education, by taking education out of politics, may not be accomplished in a single legislative session. It may not even be accomplished in a single gubernatorial term. But we have to make the effort, and we have to begin, and I am pledged to do so.
Education is not a proper role or function of government, not at the federal level, not at the state level. However, in Texas we have a constitutional provision which requires the state of Texas to provide a suitable means for an efficient, I'm paraphrasing, method of education for its citizens. So we have to honor the Constitution. But this requires to be efficient. Who can say that what we have now is efficient? I think what we've got is an unconstitutional educational system. And the other side of the educational coin is property taxes, particularly school taxes. These run people out of house and home. We need to do a top to bottom review of education. We have a permanent school fund that has a lot of oil and gas revenues that should be devoted to education, and we should take that as a starting point and just review what does an efficient education mean, what is our constitutional requirements, what did the founders of the Texas Constitution mean. I think they wanted to have an education system to make sure that people understood liberty, that they were in a position to defend their liberty. And that's just the opposite of what we get when we send our children to government schools. They come out dumb on Texas history and on liberty and on the Constitution, and not liking America, not liking their parents sometimes, and the things that they should be taught to believe in. So I think this is something that has to be done from top to bottom, get rid of school taxes, and get a minimal government school system that will meet the requirements of the Texas Constitution, as long as that provision is there, but it will be a much different, leaner, I don't think meaner, but it certainly won't be greener educational system.
Right, the proper role of state government in the education system is to ensure no citizen is denied school rights. This is one of the only two provisions of Texas government that was required by the U.S. under the Reconstruction Act. The other one being the right to vote. And from there, Texas went on to make its constitution to include the school rights as Kathy was just describing. The state government should provide for a certain amount of funding per student, and they should provide schooling as an option at that level of funding. From the figures that I could find, goes back to 2005-06, Texas was spending a little over $7,500 per student per year. The national average is a little over $9,100. State of New York being at the top at $14,884 per kid per year. The state government should not restrict students to attending only public or charter schools as part of this funding. Parents should be given a voucher and allowed full freedom of choice when selecting a school for their children. It should also be up to the parents and the local school board to select the curriculum and to make policies for their schools. The State Board of Education should only set minimum academic standards and provide suggestions for curriculum and textbooks. It is my mission to not only start the voucher system in Texas, but to raise our funding to a more acceptable level and to eventually expand the voucher system to resident students attending colleges up to the age of 23. Educating our youth is the greatest thing we can do for our future. Thank you.
It's pretty simple if you want the federal government out of the schools here in the state of Texas. The federal government only gives us about $4 billion to the state of Texas for our schools. That's about 10% of what the state provides to the school system. So all you have to do is cut 10% out of your budget and you get the federal government out of your schools. How do you do that? Let's not educate the legal immigrants here in this state. If you're here legally, let's not spend a penny on you. How do you expand a better school system? Charter schools is one way that is being offered currently. There's about a 40,000 student waiting list right now this year to get into charter schools. What are charter schools? Charter schools are modified public education where the curriculum is not set by the state. The charter schools are able to set their own curriculum. They still have to take the tax test, but they have their own curriculum. That's one option. Private schools is a better option. If we were allowed to have vouchers for our students, we would then have a better opportunity for our private industry to be creative and provide a higher quality education than what we're doing now, and they can do it at approximately half the cost. So what about that? If you want to cut the education cost in half, send them to private schools. Imagine that. We sit there and spend $7,500 per child. What if we give them a voucher for $4,000? They get to go choose what school they want to go to. They're no longer restricted areas they have to live in. Better opportunity for everyone. There's all kinds of options out there. The state of Texas has a gross domestic product of about $1 trillion. That puts us about 15th in the world. We have all the money in the world we need to operate a state in here. Again, we spend about 45% of our state budget on schools. If we don't get our infrastructure going in this state, who cares about education? There's not going to be a single job for the majority of us to even want to go to school. Thank you.